my name's Ketevan. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a recent reads today, so I'm going to be trying to do these more in 2023. I don't know, we'll see. Like, my goal is to do at least 3 or 4 per month, and just so I'm able to talk a little bit more in depth about all the books I'm reading, because I think I'll still keep doing a monthly wrap-up, but only talk about the books I really liked, because it's just a lot of books to try to get into 20-minute video. So I don't know, that's my plan. We'll see how it goes. Who knows? But anyway, so the first book of the year, I'm so happy. I really enjoyed it. It was the perfect start to the year. It was called If Not Winter, Fragments of Sappho. And so I actually heard about this first from Ben on Doom Antidote. And, you know, if you first think about it, it's a little goofy. So basically Sappho is, you know, the Sapphic poet of ancient Greece, and basically we only know she was such a great poet because we have people writing about how such a great poet she was, but the vast majority of her poetry is gone. Like, we don't actually have it written down anywhere. We just hear from all these other amazing people in history of like, oh my gosh, I love Sappho, or I'm quoting Sappho, this is Sappho. So anyway, basically most of what Sappho works you buy and read today are actually the translators filling in the gaps, because we literally just have like fragments of her poetry. And so what Carlson did, the woman who translated this work, is she just translated the fragments. And the vast majority of pages are between like 2 to 5 words, and that's all that's left of the whole poem. So of course, like, that's why traditional publishing has, you know, said, let's try to fill this in, or let's not bother. But honestly, I think those little fragments, most of them are really, really beautiful. And the way Ben talked about it, I was like, okay, I gotta check this out. You know, especially since I knew I wanted to read more Sappho, I thought like reading just the fragments and like what she'd actually written would be a better foundation than reading, you know, other people's interpretations or add-ons and fill-ins, and then going back to just the original. So I got it from the library last December, planning for it to be the first book of the year, and it was so lovely. Oh, it was such a nice way to start the year. It was really, really like moving in parts, and other parts are just like silly, but it's just like, just such a fantastic idea. So anyway, that was the first book of the year. Fantastic. And then the next book I finished for a book club. It's called Against White Feminism by, who's it by? Rafia, Zaharia. And this, I didn't really know much about it going in. I just, you know, it's like a book club book. I'm reading it. It was really good. I thought it was a really well done narrative. It was very, I won't say eye-opening for me, but I think it was a really good text for you know, understanding white feminism. And I really appreciated that she really made it quite clear that you know, white feminism isn't about white people. I mean, of course, most white feminists are white, but they don't have to be. And it's more about, you know, the status quo, or this, like, you know, the intersection of feminism and nothing else is the most important thing. And that is the problems of white feminists. So I think she did a really good job. I highly recommend it. I probably, maybe in another video, I'll say more about it in another recent reads, because I haven't actually talked about it with my book club yet. It's not for, our meeting is not for another week or so. So maybe I'll have some more interesting insights that I can like pick up from my book club. But for now, I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. So yeah. And then, oh, the next book is kind of goof, but I found this little like coffee table book from a used bookstore for like €1. And it's one of those like touristy books. Like, I don't even know if they have like a real official name, but yeah, essentially it's just like pretty pictures. And then like in the captions basically are translated into 4 different languages. So this book has English, German, Spanish, and French. And so I literally picked it up because I used to live in South Africa, and I thought like, oh, this will be nice. And I specifically picked it up because I wanted to read through the French bits. And then I thought, oh, okay, once I read through them just to practice my French, I'll like pass on the book. But then as I was reading through the book, I got all like soppy and like and nostalgic, and like I haven't been back in like 5 years, and I'm just like, oh, I miss it. And so I'm keeping it just because I think the nostalgia factor is not letting me unhaul this, but it's not really a book, but I did read it. So, so the next book is At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop, and it's translated by Anna hold on, let me find her name. Moschavakis. And I think I just talked about this. I feel like I just talked about this. Oh yeah, it was in my French literature video, duh, because it's French. So yeah, I immediately decided, as soon as I made that video, I was like, yeah, I should go back to that book, and I did, and I finished it very quickly. It was better than I expected. It still is a war book. Like, it's still basically like our main protagonist has PTSD from his war experiences. But I definitely appreciated that even though it was about World War II and our character was very much immersed in Western, culture and his environment, it definitely like kept to his Senegalese roots, and like it was really not about World War I in the sense of how the character dealt with everything. So I really, really liked that. I think I gave that also like 4.5 stars. And next up was, Polygamy, A Very Short Introduction by Sarah M.S. Pearsall, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. But anyway, if you haven't heard of these, I'm sure you've seen them around. A Very Short Introduction. It's a line of books by Oxford Press. And I think I purchased one. I don't remember what it was. When I was like 18 years old, because I was like, oh, I want to learn about that subject. And I don't know, I just bought it and read it. And I was like, that's nice. And like, I don't know, never thought anything of the rest of the series. And then when I was doing a degree at the University of Edinburgh, they had this whole like system of like free resources you could do. So like, I don't remember. There was like, free, like a paid version of a course, Lydia, I think, a Coursera thing, and all these things. And they had all of these very short introductions on ebook that you could just get for free. And back then, let's say, it wasn't as easy to get ebooks for free. So I really was like super excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to read one of these every month. I'm going to learn so much. I'm going to like, really expand my mind, all for free. And of course I ended up being too busy and forgetting about it and not reading a single one for free. But now I've just discovered that actually Scribd has a whole bunch of them for free. I mean, not free, it's included in the subscription fee, but they have both the ebooks and the audiobooks. So, and they're like between 3 and 5 hour audiobooks. So you can they're basically like long podcast episode essentially, especially if you speed up the audio. So I just kind of can plow through them very quickly. And I kind of feel like I'm probably going to be doing that a little bit. So anyway, I started off this month with Polygamy because, I promised that I would have some sort of non-monogamy video ready in November for Nonfiction November. And it didn't happen because I didn't read the one book that I thought was really important to keep on that first list. So I'm trying to get as many books together to put that video together ASAP. And so that's part of that project. It was a really good, I'll speak more about it in that video, but it was good. And it was a really good overview of polygamy, which is multiple marriage, not necessarily non-monogamy or polyamory, which is not like marriage centric, but that's all I'll say about that. And then next was Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neill, How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy. So I found this in Amsterdam for like $1 or $2, and I was just like, oh, this is kind of like vaguely interesting. And I checked the Goodreads, and the Goodreads ratings were really good. Really enjoyed it. It was really like a light read. This isn't really a critique, but there's just like almost no math in this, which is like good if you're not into math and you just want to understand the impact math has on our society, which of course was her purpose and why you can't really critique her for not including math, because she has a lot of other projects that are meant to speak to other data scientists, and this was her work that is meant to speak to lay people. So I completely understand why there wasn't any math in there. I would have, of course, personally appreciated more math, but obviously there are other ways for me to get that information. Otherwise, I really, really enjoyed it. Each of her subject areas, I knew that math had an impact in those arenas, so I'll just go through the chapter selections. So we have college admissions, online advertising, criminal justice, of course, job applications, job evaluations, the credit system in the US, and insurance, calculations and pricing, and voting. So these are all the different arenas where basically big data is becoming so powerful that it's becoming too powerful in the sense that we are, as a society, are not fully aware of its downsides or what it can't do, and we're assuming like, oh, it's big data, it's perfect, it'll fix everything, it's always right no matter what. I mean, that's not true in any respect, but in these particular arenas, it's actually going to or been proven to be quite harmful. So it was it's really quick. It's less than 300 pages, it's barely over 200 pages, and it's really well written in the sense that it's very easy to understand, and she has lots of examples without it being very math heavy. So recommend that one as well. And then next, I did not like this one. I think everyone's more familiar with the Call of the Wild, which is like the story from the perspective of the dog, Buck, who like gets sold into ownership in Alaska. He becomes a sled dog and you know, blah, blah, blah. And it was fine, but I didn't, you know, I was like, okay. And then White Fang, I was just like, wow, the racism is just too much. Like, I cannot, like, it was like over the top. And in general, Jack London, you know, with his like dog work, the stories about, you know, with protagonists as dogs, the personification I find very strange. You know, I get it, like this is like a thing when you make the animal a main character, but that personification was so human, so like it was just like a perfect mirror of a human archetype that it just, I don't know, it felt super fake and forced to me. The writing style I do like. I do like his very like, you know, simple, clear-cut, not flowery language. So it was easy to read in that sense, but the racism and the like over-the-top personification just made it really like painful. And then so this has Call of the Wild, White Fang, which are kind of like novels or novellas. And then there's 2 short stories in here. Bâtard, which is the French word for bastard. That one I really, really hated. It was so racist, so just like, it's a short story about a very, very toxic dog and man, and basically just a narration of their life and their downfall. And I don't know, I'm sure there is a literary value to it. That's why it's in one of the little black books, but it was just kind of like gross to me. And I literally was like, wow, is this a 1 star? 1 star for me, like, I genuinely don't think this is worth the paper it's printed on. So it's very hard to get a 1 star from me, because even if I think something's horrible, generally I want it to be out there so people can critique it, right? So like, you know, it's hard for me to say like this shouldn't exist. And I was like on the verge of giving it a 1.5 just because I was like, it's just so bleh. But then there's another, what's it called? The last short story that I read in here, Love of Life. It was one of the best short stories I've ever read. And so I literally almost didn't read it because I had read Call of the Wild, White Fang, and then I was going to read the 2 short stories last. And the first short story, Bâtard, I really hated. So I was like, oh, is it even worth reading this last short story? Like, it's not, I'm not going to like it. I literally only read it just to say I didn't DNF the book. And I ended up absolutely loving it. So that's, again, why I'm very hesitant to DNF stuff, especially like compendiums or collections of things where it's like each work is a little bit different, even if it's all the same author. So I really, really love this one. It's basically just a guy. He is hiking. We know he's hiking somewhere with his buddy. And as he crosses a river, he twists his ankle. And he's like, oh, Bill, I twisted my ankle. And Bill just like walks away and like leaves him in the Alaskan wilderness. And he's just like, okay, like, and he's like, oh, maybe Bill's just gonna wait ahead for me. And it's like, Bill did not wait for him. And so basically this guy has to get somewhere. He doesn't know where he's going necessarily. He only can tell where he is if there's sun, and it's Alaska, so there's often not very much sun. And so he's basically just like wandering around in the Alaskan tundra, trying to live. And there's so many opportunities where he could have just like been like, okay, it's my time to die. Like, it's happening. And he just like forced life because his love for life and his will to live was so strong. Overall, I gave the whole collection a 2.5 stars just because obviously those 25 pages don't make up for the whole thing. But I really recommend it's, you know, Jack London I think is mostly in the public domain, so you can definitely just find this, you know, short story as a PDF on one of those free websites, and I highly recommend that short story. The rest of them, it's like meh. And in random bookish news, I am super excited because I am going to get to meet Natasha Brown tomorrow. So my library is hosting her. They do like an author's speaking series, and I saw it last minute, like just a few days ago, and I'm so happy I did because I really enjoyed Assembly. I wasn't sure I would. I'll link the video where I talked more about this book, but basically it's about a Black woman dating a white man, and how infuriating his family is, and also just like how she has to be so perfect to be accepted, and then even then she's not accepted. So I'm really happy to have a copy ready for her to sign, and I guess I'll keep you updated and let you know what happens next week. So that's what I've already read this month, and now I'll just briefly go over what I'm currently reading right now. I'm reading, ooh, I never took the price tag off, but oh well, it's fine. I paid $4.50 for it. The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. Actually, I think I found this when I was with Annabella when she came to Paris and we went book shopping. But anyway, so I originally picked it up specifically just because it came from Vintage Crime, which is an imprint from Vintage that focuses on like classic crime noir type books. And so it's been on my shelf for a couple months, and then I'm only about like maybe a quarter of the way through. And then my mom found the Swiss Family Robinson and told me about it. She said, oh, I'm reading it. I was like, oh, it's on my shelf. I'll read it too. And so I'm about like almost halfway through with this. It is kind of a wild ride. Like this island where they are, it's like, you know, I mean, if you've seen the movie from Walt Disney from like the 60s or 70s, it is wild. Like, oh yeah, sure, there's rhinos and flamingos alongside tigers and monkeys, and like, you know, just this like imaginary place where, you know, white people were just like, yeah, all those exotic things, they're on the same little island, right? Like, so it's just a funny children's book. Basically, the whole thing was written, the guy, Johann David Wyss, or Weiss, I think, because he's Swiss German, but anyway, is basically told these stories to his children as they went to sleep. And he never intended them to be published. And then like 50 years later, his son put them together for publication. So like, you know, knowing that, it's a lot easier to like just enjoy it for what it is, which is like a bunch of bedtime stories from a dad who didn't know much about the world, and just leave it at that and kind of make it almost like fantastical in your head. One thing I am incredibly frustrated by is that this and a lot of editions, it seems, like just completely like deletes the translator. Like I honestly almost thought this was written in English because there's just no translator anywhere. Yeah, this is one of my huge pet peeves around older classics that like have become so ingrained into our Western Anglo English culture that like we forget that there was a translator, and the translator does matter. So anyway, I have my little rant for the day. Swiss Family Robinson, fun so far. Catch-22, I picked this up during Doorstopper Doom. I keep calling it Doomstopper. Doorstopper Doom. And I got about a third of the way before the month ended, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break from the Doorstoppers. And I decided to pick this up again. It's you know, same thing, war book, boy book. It's funny, it's absurd. Obviously it didn't draw me in enough to like plow through it, but I am enjoying it. So we'll see how that goes. And then we have Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Bryan Stevenson. I'm only about 10% of the way through this one. I think I'm gonna not love it. It's fine. Obviously it's written well and everything, but I think this is a more basic introduction to criminal justice and the intersection with race. And I think I've just read a little bit too much to appreciate it. You know, I know it is going to focus on one single case, so I do want to read it to learn more about that particular case. So far, we'll see. I mean, even if I don't particularly enjoy it, that probably means it's going to be a really good basic introduction to criminal justice, so I'll probably recommend it. We'll see how it goes. And then last but not least, The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. This is, I'm only picking this up because I am trying to read I'm gonna start doing my Nobel Prize winners, and I really want to start with the ones I have on my shelf. I read the little synopsis, you know, the non-spoiler synopsis about a guy in China who he marries a slave from like the rich I forget the terminology, but from the kind of like, it's feudal China, basically. So, you know, the lord of the land, he has a slave, and he goes and, I guess, buys the slave to be his wife, and then he basically wants to buy a plot of land, and have that be his land. And then the family ends up having to leave the rural area of China to go into urban areas, because that's just like, you know, how the economics went at that time, I'm supposing. I haven't gotten to that part yet. He literally just got the idea to buy the land, so we'll see how it goes. It is very well written. I'll have to admit, I wasn't super excited to read this because obviously it's a white American woman writing about Chinese characters, and I have seen multiple times that people respond saying like, oh, this makes me understand China, and I'm like, no, like, you can't understand China from one white woman's fictional novel about one specific period in time history. I don't know. It's, you know, I'm trying to be open. As I learned last year, like the Poisonwood Bible, I was really thinking it would be terrible, and I loved it. You know, obviously it's still a white woman writing about it, but I want to be open, you know, I want to give it a shot. So we'll see. But so far, you know, it's nothing, I don't think anything in it is going to be offensive, but yeah, I'm reading it for what it is. And, Pearl Buck was a white expat living in China. That's it, you know? So that's the last of the books I'm currently reading. If you've read any of them, let me know what you think. Same with the ones I've already read. If you have any recommendations, please let me know as always. And until next time, bye.